basically, it's going to change your feeling. It's going to change your approach if you decide to follow the thought.
Yeah.
But if you look at it from the perspective, you know what, I'm not judging it. It comes, that's what the brain is supposed to do, and let it go and then come back to the present moment. So that taught me how to manage my thought, my fears, my anxiety. And sometimes I was depressed all this time.
Mhm.
You know, even when I was married, I had a conversation. My mom one day called me and she's like, she told me, you know, I don't recognize you. You know, you're not the person that went into this marriage. The person that you used to be when you went before you got into this marriage and the person that you are now, I don't like this person. I don't know who that is, and I don't want to see it.
Welcome to Winning the Divine Lottery. I'm your host, Amy Dawes. Hi, Eve. Welcome to Winning the Divine Lottery podcast. It's so great to have you here.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah. So we have Yves Mukanya in the house. You're originally from Central Africa,
Correct,
DRC, is that correct?
correct,
And
correct.
currently residing where in the US?
I'm in East Providence in the state of Rhode Island. It's down south from Massachusetts.
Oh, that's awesome.
Hmm.
And you're a therapist, a transformational coach, and a mental health advocate. And I know we spoke before this podcast, and
Hmm.
you just really have been through a lot, which has inspired and motivated you for real change and also helping other people. So I would love just to hand that over to you and open up with what you feel like sharing from that perspective right off the hop.
Okay, so where do you want me to start from from the beginning when I came here, or from what really drove my transformation? I think if that's what you want.
Yeah, I would love a little bit of both if you wouldn't mind.
Okay. All right. So from the get-go, came here in the US when I was 19 years old to go to college. And you know, from a 19-year-old perspective, I was still young, and I was the first time that I left my father's house. Coming here over, I was living over my uncle's for a little bit, and I had cousins and things, but you know, living away from your family, living oh, for the first time actually, it was quite difficult. I think I experienced some depression at some point, and I was just glad that I had a few people that I could talk to. Some of my cousins came and helped me out, but and I also try to make some friends, but in the beginning, I mean, coming from a country where I only spoke French, right? French was my first language, so speaking French was very difficult to connect with other people. So I made an effort to learn English as best as I could, right? Because before leaving the country, I only spent about 9 months studying English, and then after that, you're supposed to take a test. I believe it's a TOEFL that you have to pass with the American Embassy, and they actually give you a visa after that. So that's how I got my visa to come here.
Wow.
Yeah, so 9 months of school, 9 months of English, and I was here. The good thing is, college classes were easier to understand for me. Right? I don't know why, but it was easier for me to understand my teachers in class than to have conversation with other people. So one thing that I decided to do to improve my vocabulary was buying books and reading it anytime that I could. So I was taking breaks in between, like in between class, I'll pop up a book and start reading it for vocabulary. I When I was eating, I was reading a book, and that kind of drove me. And now it's just a habit. Now, like a couple of years later, I'm still reading books all the time because that's a habit that I cultivated.
That's
But
incredible. Can I just say something about that? Because I really
go
want to
ahead.
acknowledge you because it sounds like even then, when you were 19, you just had something within you that really wanted to excel
Mm-hmm.
at life and become a version of yourself that could really shape and mold your reality. That takes a lot of guts and courage.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks. It did. It did. But you know what? At the time,
Yeah.
it didn't feel that way. At the time, it just felt like it's necessary for me to do it.
Mm.
Otherwise, I'm gonna fail. I mean, you should have seen my first English paper. It was horrible, horrible. Like even the professor, when I gave it to the professor, she's like, my friend, that's not it. right? That's not the way we write. That's not the sentences are awful. The font that you use were bad. So to be honest, it was horrible. But as the semester was going on, as I was sorry, moving forward, I stayed close to the teacher. Like every time there was an assignment, I would go to her, ask her about the structure, and we would talk about the paper. We talk about this, and if I show at the end of the semester, one thing she called me up. She After she gave us our last paper, she called me. She's like, "I want to show you something." She pulled out my first paper, and she pulled out my last paper, and she's like, do you see the difference? How much work you have put in? Look at the difference between your first one and look at the difference between your last one. It was night and day. All right. So I had put a lot of work. She's like, I commend you for the work that you put in, the dedication that you had, but keep going and keep showing up the way you show up. And that kind of reinforced me because I always thought that, you know what, I have no idea what I'm doing. And so speaking and English and writing was kind of out of reach. So I had to put the time and effort. And even my self-esteem was not that high at the time. So when you hear people telling you that you're doing a good job, when you hear people reinforcing and telling you that the effort that you make, you are being seen, the effort that you make, that makes all the difference. So for me, it was just hearing what she said reinforcement. It's like, okay, I made the right decision. I had the right behavior, and those that reinforced those behaviors, and I kept going, doing the same thing over until I graduated from college.
Yeah, that's incredible. She sounds like she was a guardian angel put on your path for a specific purpose too.
Yeah.
What books did you read? What kind of books were you drawn to?
Well, um, I'm a science fiction geek, right? So I'll go science fiction and fantasy because my thought process was I have to read to read the books that I'm interested in. If I'm not interested in, I'm forcing myself to read something that I'm not really interested in. I'm not going to learn anything, and that's not going to force me to pick up the next book, right? So for me, my genre, science fiction, fantasies, and I could read those books very. I started reading those books very quickly. So for me, like anytime that I would go to the library, I don't know if you remember Borders. Borders was my favorite place to go. Like I'll spend hours and hours in Borders, like sitting, going through books until I find the one that really resonate with me at the time, and I'll pick it up, and then
Yeah.
I'll go from there.
Yeah, I love that about you. That's incredible. So bring us from 19, you get through college, you
Mhm.
become a master speaker and writer in English because I read your bio. I know that you do speaking. So how did you get to being a psychotherapist and an advocate for mental health and coaching?
Mm. All right. So to me, it started from pain. All right. Like there was no decision or I was like, oh yeah, like this is my path or this is my purpose. No, it was to me, it wasn't like that. It started from pain, from a place of pain. First of all, the pain that I experienced by being by myself, and then always asking myself, what am I supposed to do? Where am I supposed to go? Right? Like not understanding yet my path, and it's normal. Like I was in my 20s and early 30s. I was not figuring it out yet. And on top of it, I decided I wanted to go to medical school, but it didn't work out for me. So everything like it always felt like there was always failures. And at some point I decided to get married after a huge failure. Instead of looking at things, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get married. I was with this woman for about 10 years. I was like, okay, she's there. Like I think it's the right time. It's the right person. We see things from the same perspective. We're coming from the same country. Why not get married? So we got married, and I think it was not. I'm not gonna say it was not the best decision, but uh, we didn't go at it very prepared. And then and I also made that decision at the moment when I was still trying to figure things out. Nothing was really
Mhm.
clear. So my marriage was not the best. Like there was a lot of things that we could have done better that we didn't do. There was a lot of things that I could have done better that I didn't do. There was a lot of that. Um, I mean, I could have been more present as a husband, but sometimes because I was so much in my head so much trying to figure things out that I couldn't get, I couldn't be there as present. And I'm
Hmm.
pretty sure that she felt the same way too, but on also it's only my perspective, right? And going through that, we had two kids, but as we were moving forward, the more we were moving, the more we were going, I noticed that I wasn't showing up as a good father either for my two kids. All right, so I'm like, I have two boys. What what am I gonna give them if I continue in the trajectory? What are they gonna learn from me if I'm only a shadow of myself?
Wow.
All right, so it was very hurtful because one day, like I think one of the worst experience I had, like me and my ex-wife were arguing, and my first son was there, and I looked at him. He put his hands over his ears. He was not even 1 year old yet.
Hmm.
Right. I was like, what am I doing? What are we doing? And then I walked away. And then one morning I woke up, I think, and I went in front of my mirror. Kid you not, I could not recognize the person looking back at me. I was like, who is this person?
Hmm.
And then things started to get worse and worse and worse. And then at the end, the choice was, if I continue this way, I'm not gonna show up. I'm never gonna show up as a person I know I could be. My potential will not flourish because instead of focusing on growing, all I'm gonna be doing is putting all my energy in a relationship that's not working. And that's gonna start my growth. So I just
Hmm.
decided to go and probably made the hardest decision, and I asked for a divorce. And of course, divorce comes with a lot of different things, and it was the hardest part. But going through this, right? Because I was in a position where I had everything. I had a house, I had a wife, I had children. I would come from work, and I'll spend time with my kids. To the court's telling you that you can't see your children, like you only see your children this amount of time, and that's about it. So instead of looking at it as something that's negative, I decided to, instead of focusing on all the negative, because that's all I've been doing up until that point. And it's also my belief that whatever you focus on, that's what you magnify in your life. Right. So I decided that I wanted to focus on something totally different. I wanted to focus on growth. I wanted to focus on the things that I wanted to create in my life.
Hmm.
Right. And that required me to work internally because I had brought a lot of those things that I haven't worked on yet from leaving the country when I was 19, like all those difficulties as an immigrant, for trying to find making money, all those little challenges that I have accumulated. I never dealt with the pain of that yet. So
Hmm.
I decided to deal with that pain. I decided to really look at myself and be honest. It's like, you can't continue this way.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do? So I decided to go to therapy and to really work on getting my mind right. As you say, like one of my favorite um, philosopher, because I love philosophy. One of my favorite philosophers is out in the French, René Descartes. And his favorite quote is, I think, therefore I am. So whatever you think about, that's who you become. And what you become, that's what you create around you. So whatever comes from the inside, your external environment is a representation of your internal environment. So if I wanted to create an environment where where I was proud, an environment where I was proud and fulfilled and having good relationship with my children and showing up as the father that I know I could be, I needed to change my internal. And I started working on it. And that led me to I think 2 years of therapy, 2 or 3 years of therapy. And then close to the end, when I started really looking at stuff, I looked at my therapist. I'm like, you know what? I want to do the things that you do. My therapist, I kid you not, my therapist turned to me and she's like, you know what? I was just waiting for you to tell me that. Because I think that you would be great at it. It's just that I couldn't tell you because you had to come to that conclusion by yourself because that's your life. I couldn't influence you. I couldn't tell you. But I already saw those signs. I saw what it is that you could do. But you had to get to that conclusion yourself. It looks like there was something that was stopping you from getting there, but you had to think about it in yourself. So, and when I made that decision, I went and I'm like, all right, let me find the first school that I wanted to go to. I found the program in Johnson's and Wells. The same way, this I think 2 days later I applied. A week later, I had the interview. And 3 days later, I was accepted in the program.
Amazing.
It only took me just to make that decision. And from that point, I went through the program. I mean, it was a lot of challenges, but in between, like going to school and stuff, it was a lot of challenge. But I made it. So now I'm focusing on because I know the pain for it because I love to work with men and I also not discrimination to women, but I understand men more
Yeah.
because of the things that I went through, and I also understand what it is to feel stuck, right? What it is to have no direction, what it is to feel like everything is just literally crumbling around you and you have no control over everything.
Hmm.
All right. And also in the meantime, as I was going through that process, therapy, school, and also started looking at other different things. I started meditating. I started doing Zen meditation. And Zen meditation is all about looking at looking at ourselves, basically being still and being present in the moment, but also looking at your thought with no judgment. Right? Thought can come. You can have a thought that comes, but a thought is just a thought. It doesn't change anything. It doesn't do anything. The person basically, it's going to change your feeling. It's going to change your approach if you decide to follow the thought.
Yeah.
But if you look at it from a perspective, you know what, I'm not judging it. It comes. That's what the brain is supposed to do, and let it go, and then come back to the present moment. So that taught me how to manage my thought, my fears, my anxiety, and sometimes I was depressed all this time.
Mhm.
You know, even when I was married, I had a conversation. My mom one day called me and she's like, she told me, you know, I don't recognize you. You know, you're not the person that went into this marriage. The person that you used to be when you went before you got into this marriage and the person that you are now, I don't like this person. I don't know who that is and I don't want to see it. I couldn't hear it. Even a friend of my parents, like when I was married, she came to my house, to our house, to see our kids. She played with the kids and we had conversation. Mind you, we had conversation. I was talking to this lady and I know this lady for over 4 or 5 before for 4 or 5 years. I've known her for 4 or 5 years before she came to my house. So she's very familiar with my family. She knows my parents, she knows me and everything. So she came to our house and played with the kids. And then she heard that I divorced. A year after I divorced, I saw this lady at a party. I went and said hi to her. She looked at me like she didn't recognize me. And I went and sat. And her sister, who is also a good friend of my parents, was next to her. And she asked her sister, who's this guy? The sister is like, are you serious right now? She's like, yeah, I don't know him. She's like, no, that's Yves, right? The son of so and so. She's like, that's not possible. She left her place and came to where I was sitting and she apologized. She's like, my son, I apologize. I did, to be honest, I did not recognize you. You look so much better and you look so different than the person that I saw 2 or 3 years ago. If you passed me on the street, I wouldn't even know that it was you,
Mm. That just
right?
really speaks to that when you do the inner work, like you do, you go through an unrecognizable transformation. Can
Mm-hmm.
I just say a couple of things from everything that you said because you're sharing so beautifully. And I really appreciate and value this conversation so much because I know how many men need to hear conversations like this, men who
Mm-hmm.
are where you were within your marriage of being stuck, whether they're in a marriage or not, but just the
Mm-hmm.
feeling of being stuck, not recognizing themselves, not knowing who they are or how to move forward. And for you to be so vulnerable to share your story so gracefully and with so much tenderness and authority is really beautiful. And I wanted to ask, because I
Mm-hmm.
know you love working with men,
Mm-hmm.
what do you think for somebody who is in that place of listening to this and being like, "Oh man, if he can find a way, I can find a way."
Mm-hmm.
What do you think is the primary first thing that you had to do, that decision that you had to make for yourself to start that momentum towards becoming the man you are today?
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think even I mean the question is the way I approach this is usually also how I approach my own therapy. All right. What is it that you want?
Mm-hmm.
If you can't answer that, then spend time figuring it out. Right. Because the way I look at it, right, it's like a GPS. If I give you a GPS receiver, it's useless to you. It become a GPS or it becomes helpful to you when you put a direction. Then it shows you the road and all the steps, what you can do or where you can go to get to where you need to be.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So basically, you have to start defining what it is that you want. I'll always go have my client go through that exercise, design the life that you want. So basically, think about it this way: take away all the restriction
Mm-hmm.
and design the perfect life for you. Don't think about your current situation. Don't think about anything that you're looking at right now. No, force your brain, force your mind to go beyond what you see and then connect with the vision, that vision that you have. If you don't have it, create it. But you have to decide to create an anchor, like a destination. You might not get to that destination because getting to the destination is not what's important, is what you do to get there. Because
Yeah.
as you're walking towards that decision, there's transformation. There's a lot of things that you have to let go of. And there's a lot of things that you have to put on. All right. There's a lot of people that you have to let go, as you know, separate from. And there's new people, and you have to create space for new people to come in. All right. So it's you. Like you have to understand that your life is in your control. And
Mm-hmm.
taking that control start by making a decision of where do I start? And the first step is to design, decide what it is that you want. Once you have that, then the action step are gonna come, and you have to make the decision. You have to commit to moving forward. You have to commit to taking steps towards that. So if you can't do it, you know, and that I think if you can't decide from from the start, if you can't decide what it is that you want, it becomes very challenging. And if you can't find that out or it's very difficult, seek help.
Yeah.
You know, I had to go and find help for myself. I seek help.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that you said that because I mean, even my experience in my coaching business, there's when you ask people what they want, some people have never ever thought about it.
Hmm.
And it can be a real internal transformation just to put yourself in the energy of thinking and really getting clear about what you want. That in and of itself can really shift something for people. So I love that you also said if you don't know what you want, ask for help because you don't have to do it alone.
Hmm.
And also, who from the man that walked into your marriage to the man that's sitting here today sharing
Hmm.
what what have you become? Like if you could describe that, what have you become?
What I've become, to be honest, that's the first time that somebody asked me that. Um, Well, if I can say what I have become from, I'm, I'll say this. I'm more clear about the things that I want. I'm more calm. I'm able now to be more present. And I understand that, there's always going to be challenges here and there, but I understand now it's like I'm at the point where I understand better that the challenges that I had to go through were not just against, like, life will work for you, right? Life will always show you the way, whether you like it or not. It's up to you now to make the decision to follow it, right? So the transformation that I went through and the person that to be honest, I'm still growing. All right. If 2 years ago you have told me that I'll be here talking about this being in a podcast, I would say that you're crazy. Right. Because to be honest, no, like I had to go through, and I'm serious, because 2 years ago, I thought that nobody would want to hear anything that I have to say because of my accent. I was so
Wow.
self-conscious of my accent that I I stopped myself from doing this. All right. I bought my podcast equipment in January 2023. I shot my first video in September was 2023. And it was some crappy videos, but it took me that time to get there. So if you ask me, yes, I'm more resilient as well.
Mhm.
I'm more resilient, but also because one thing that always drives me is family and freedom. So those are my strongest values: family and freedom. Because I also believe that you cannot do anything if you don't have a sense of freedom. The sense of freedom has to come first because you have to have free will to make the decision that you want to make. So now I'm also a better father, even though I don't spend a lot of time with my kids. But
Mm.
when I have them, it's only for them. I don't
Mm.
pick up the phone. I don't talk to anybody. Nobody come to see me. If you want to take my time, the time, basically you want me to include you in that time, you have to be someone very special. Because my time with my kids is my time with my kids. And anybody that comes and want to be in that space at that time have to be somebody very special. Because I want to be the person. I want to show my kids the possibility. Because when we used to live with them, I used to live with them. They saw a shadow of who I was. But as time went on, like they they were witness to my transformation. They saw the changes that I went through, and that's something that I also always want to show them that it's possible. There's possibility out there, right? Whatever you put your mind to, you can do. But I want to show them. I want them to look at me and say, you know what? If Dad was able to do it with little to no resources or help, but he was able to figure it out. And he doesn't speak a better English than I do, but he was able to figure it out. Then I can figure it out. Right? That's what I want. I want to show them. That's what I want to leave behind. Like even if I don't leave anything, I don't need money or anything like that or inheritance. But that lesson, it's possible. Just put yourself in out there. Put yourself out there. Decide on the decision on the direction and commit
Mm.
to get to the goal. Then it's possible, man. Nothing in this world comes that's eternal. Everything passes. The difficulty or your struggle, they're gonna pass,
Yeah.
you know. But in your struggles, what's gonna determine the person who comes out is how you decide to look at that situation.
Yeah.
If you look at it as something that it's against me, the person who's gonna come out is gonna be a whiner, somebody who's not accountable. But if you decide to look at it from the perspective, you know what lesson can I learn from this? And that's not the easiest path.
No.
That's not the easiest path. But if you force yourself to always look for the lessons, then anything that you put your mind to, you can accomplish. Nothing is here to stop you, you
Yeah.
know? So I went all over the place with that question and
Okay.
but it's just because just to say that there's not one word, right, that where I can fit who I became because I'm still growing. I'm still evolving. The person I am today is probably going to be the different person that I'm going to be tomorrow,
Yeah.
right? But all I am is just that right now, I'm the best me,
Mm,
all
I
right?
love that.
This is me. That's the
Yeah.
best me. And I'm not ashamed of it. I'm not, I want to change anything, you know, I'm opening. And I also understand that I'm not for everybody. Some people are going to hate the way I look at things. Some people are going to love it. If you love it, we vibe, that's fine. And if you don't, that's fine too. Because out there, there's somebody that's a match for you. So I'm not for everybody.
Yeah.
So that's just me. Like I accept who I am. I accept where I am, and I'm happy to be the person I am today. That's at least that's how I can answer that question.
I love that. And I love that you went all over the place. And I love the way you think because I think very, very similarly. So yeah, I'm digging your vibe. It's great. And when you started talking about your sons too, I love that you went there because I was actually going to ask you a couple of things around being a father. The first one is what's what's the best thing about being a father for you? I'll
Mm,
start with there. I'll do one at a time.
okay. The best thing about being a father is, that there's a feeling of satisfaction when
Mm,
you're a role model. Like people think that, and I see that with a lot of divorced father, and I'm not blaming them for it because when you don't have your kids with you, and you have them for just a small amount of time, a lot of we try to you try to overcompensate, and I was guilty of that myself as well, right? Like buying all the gifts, buying this, all those things just to show, and like, okay, I'm gonna buy you this just to show you that I'm a good father. But
mm,
that's not it. That's not it. What they remember is who is present. You know, my kids remember are happy when they have recitals and what their school do songs and stuff. If every year they have they're part of the choir or whatever of their school and they sing and they do all those things. They don't remember me buying them a gift. They remember me showing up for those things.
yeah.
When there's a school play, I make an effort to come. Even though sometimes me and their mom don't see eye to eye, or that doesn't matter. The relationship with me and their mom doesn't affect the relationship that I have to have with them. All right. So you see, there's also a satisfaction when you sit with your sons or your kids, and when you talk to them, and they learn the lesson. One thing that I still remember to this day is when I was still married and my son was learning how to walk. I took him outside, and he was still wobbling and things, and he fell. And I saw him when he fell. He hit. Probably, I don't think he hit too hard, but he stopped with his hands, and then he looked at me. So I had two things. I had to make a decision. There's two things that I could do: either stay here, look at him, and encourage him, or run towards him and tell him how, oh yeah, trying to clean him up and calm him down for anything like that. I decided not to do that. I decided to stay where I was. I asked him a question. So how are you all right? He looked at me. He moved his head that way because he couldn't talk well. And I'm like, okay, then what are we doing? Stand up. He stared at me for 2 or 3 seconds, and then he stood up. No cry, nothing. Dusted himself off. I'm like, "Okay, go, come," and he kept walking.
Hmm.
All right, there's satisfaction in that, because I'm not giving you a gift or physical gift. Is I'm forming your mind.
Mm.
I'm making somebody who understand that, yeah, every time that I learn, I'm learning something. I'm gonna fail. I'm gonna fail. I'm gonna fall. Or I'm gonna hurt myself at some point. But that's not the end or be all. That's not the end of the road. You still have to stand up and walk and keep moving forward. And that's a decision that you have to make. So if I ran towards him and help him up, clean him up, I would have been teaching him how to feel. And the way he's gonna learning how to feel is not his personal feelings. It's gonna be he's gonna be mirroring my feelings, my feeling of fear. So in his head, it's like, okay, if I fall, it's a bad thing. If I made that decision, but I had to teach him, like, yes, falling is part of the process.
Mm.
All right, hurting yourself is part of the process. But as I said earlier, it's how you look at it that's gonna define. That's gonna make all the difference. So
Yeah.
if you decide to look at it differently, then yeah, that's how you grow. So to me, it's like forming or teaching my children. Basic, it's the mind work, physical work. Like, yeah, like my kids are very physical. We fight and I tickle them and they love that, right? But the work is when you work on their mind. Because that's the thing. What I'm like, okay, I want to make valuable people, not only for the society or everybody, but for themselves as well. Because if you don't have that self-esteem, if you don't have that reliance and that strength of mind, it's going to be very difficult for you to move in the world. So in a way, I'm preparing them to when they're going to step into the world. And I think that to me, that's the most satisfying thing. It's not about the gift. It's not about um, buying the last Jordans or the PlayStations or something. It's not about that. Sorry about that.
That's
It's
okay.
not about that. It's about spending time. It's about building, putting the foundation into the men that they are going to be. And if I'm part of it, whatever I said, they only took 2 or 3 bricks and put in their foundation. And those 2 bricks is where their foot are going to stand and build the person that they're going to be in the future. I think my job is done.
Hmm. You are so much farther ahead than a lot of people. And I don't mean that in a hierarchy way, but
Mhm.
this again, that story was so powerful for me. And what I heard from that is the biggest thing that you gave your son was to choose how he wanted to feel because
Mhm.
you didn't project your fear onto him. So to have that level of awareness and to be that conscious, that is the gift. That is the gift that you're passing on to both of your sons, and it's incredible. And I think when we go through this transformation of undergoing this sort of pain that gets to the point where enough is enough and we want to change,
Mhm.
that we then become the gift for our children because of how present we can be in moments like that. And we
Mhm.
don't always get it right and we don't always get it perfect, but every time we do something like that, you're right. We are just building that foundation for them.
Yeah.
Um, so your podcast is called Rising and Thriving.
Yes.
What is your underlying motivation, inspiration behind the podcast and what you want people to receive when listening to it?
It's the same message that I talk about. To me, it's possible,
Yeah.
right? No matter where you are in life, no matter what you're going through, difficulty like divorce, work, anything, you
Mm.
know, it's it's possible to get through it. You're gonna get through it,
Yeah.
but as I said, it's who is gonna come out of it that matters. And that is totally on in your control.
Mhm.
You control who is gonna come out. And you have to start with your mind, right? Your mind decide everything. So if you want to come out as a stronger, brighter, talkative, better version of you, that's your decision. If you don't, if that's your decision, yeah, you're gonna make it. But you have to make that decision, and you also have to understand that decision is under your control. If you let other people take control of things, your situation, or if you let your situation take control, the person that is gonna come out might not be the person that you want to see in the mirror.
Yeah,
You know,
that's
so
so true.
yeah. So for
Yeah.
me, I always remember that day when I went in front of my mirror and I could not recognize the person looking back at me. And I'm like, you know what? I am not gonna go back to that place
Mm.
because that person made so much mess. But at the same time, I'm not trying to blame that person either because it was coming from a place of hurt. That's first thing. And in that place of hurt, that person made a lot of decisions. I made a lot of decisions, and that were not the best decision I could. So I also have to have some compassion for myself. All right?
Yeah.
Because at the time, I made the decision with the information that I had. And at the time, that information forced me to me, it's like, okay, that's the best decision I could make because of the information that I had. So I had to have compassion about self compassion and understand that, you know what, everybody makes mistakes.
Yeah.
But at the end is your decision. And I think that's what I want people to get from my podcast is you make the decision. It's possible to get to move away or to grow from those challenges. And it's possible to rise from those challenges and thrive in it because I did it.
Yeah.
And believe me, if I did it, anybody can do it.
Yeah.
Anybody can do it.
You're being that living example of a
Yeah.
walking possibility. And I
Eh,
know you're just going to continue being that for the rest of your life. I know it. Okay, I have a couple of closing questions for you
mm-hmm.
that I ask everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I tweak them a little bit, but when you hear winning the divine lottery, what does that feel like for you in your heart?
Winning the divine lottery. Well, when you're talking about lottery, you're talking about success. You're talking about money, all right? But when you bring the divine in it, it's all about, to me, I see a spiritual gift. I see presence. I see, I see God literally coming and telling you that, you know what, I'm with you always. Like even when you put the when you say divine lottery, like lottery, from our human perspective, it's all about money and things. But when you add the divine to it, the physical things don't matter because you're gonna have it regardless. It's how connected you stay with God. How connected will you stay with in that presence? That's gonna determine everything else. So everything else is gonna be added,
Yeah.
right? But the divine to me is like when you win the divine lottery, it means that you're getting closer and closer. You got closer to God, and God got to recognize you and be you understand that in order for me to move forward, that's the present. I have to stay in that presence. And I think that to me, that's winning it. It's the awareness.
Mhm.
of the presence of God in your life.
Beautiful. I got chills. I love that so much. So if you had to think about your life the next like 6 to 12 months out and say, this is Eve's blank era, what would that be? What are you stepping in?
Mm. Oh, I never thought about that way. You know what? Because I think that's also the reason why I couldn't answer the question about who I became, because I never thought of myself as, or I never think. Okay, let me say, put it this way: people tell me that I'm doing great things, right? Some people's like, "Oh yeah, you have a podcast. That's great, man. Like, how did you?" I don't look at it to be personally. I don't look at it that way. I don't see myself as an expert. You know, I think to me, maybe this era is probably an era of, I'll still say growth, because we can't stop growing. We can't stop changing. So if you stop and say that, you know what, this is, I'm the expert, then you stop growing. And then you've opened the door for you to even look at yourself as, instead of looking at you, we talk about the divine lottery, right? That's that's the connection, because you can't move into different area of your life without that presence. So if you decide that you're saying, "What, I'm going to stop growing," it just means that you don't even recognize that presence anymore.
Mm,
Because being in that presence requires you to be humble, understanding that whatever you do, it's not your own doing, but it's somebody else, greater purpose. It's somebody, greater presence. It's God behind you, pushing you towards something. So if I see here, it's like, oh yeah, it's my era of this. It's just that I'm putting a definition to a certain period of time that might not be in line with God's plan. So instead of calling it my era, let's just say that it's time for God to work in me.
beautiful.
So I think that's how I can put it.
I love that so much. I love and also just wanted to point out before we wrap this up is you did speak to a couple of times that, people say I'm great and I'm doing all this good in the world. And I think, and I'm only speaking from my personal experience, but
Mhm.
when we do get asked those questions that make us think a little bit differently about like who we're becoming and how we're showing up in the world, I think it's from a place of non-ego, though, really
Mm.
wonderful when we can acknowledge how far we've come and how much we have grown, and we can do that in a very humble way. And so I just wanted to say to you that just being in your presence and your energy, and I didn't know you back then,
Yeah.
I I can feel and I can sense all of the work that has God has done through you and for you and on behalf of everybody else who has been touched by you in their lives, that it's very incredible and a beautiful transformation. And I hope that you really receive what I'm saying because you are so needed in this world by so many people that you haven't met yet. And just by being present and in your presence, you are going to shift and transform lives.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
I just say I received that.
beautiful. And we will put in the show notes how everybody can get in touch with you, listening to your podcast if they want to work with you one on one. It
Mhm.
was just such a pleasure having you here today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for listening. If you found this episode valuable, please share it with a friend.